If you remember this F10, not too long ago we did the evaporator on it. This time it's the water pump and the thermostat. Welcome back to Yev's Builds. Of course, first off, gotta jack this thing up and remove every safety panel on the bottom. There's gonna be a bunch of 8mm bolts. You'll find them, you'll locate them. They're all over the perimeter of the shield. Beautiful. So once you're down here, you are greeted with the water pump itself. It is right here, right under there. Pretty accessible, not too bad. We're gonna have to remove the fan shroud, but before that, since we're down here anyway, we're gonna remove this sway bar right here. So the sway bar, the way you remove it, there's a plastic piece on this side, one 8mm bolt right here. That way this plastic piece unbends. Same thing on that side. Then you're gonna need an E18 socket like this. There's gonna be 2 bolts on each side of the sway bar itself. Unscrew them, and then the sway bar, in theory, is just gonna swing down like that, and we're just gonna leave it up on the sway bar end links. That way we don't have to actually remove it all the way. A good thing to note here is that the front one, the front bolt that's facing away from the engine, is shorter than the one closer to the engine. Just something to note. The way the plate sits is these pieces, they're closer to the engine. The side that doesn't have those weird angles on it is away from the engine. Now there's way more room to get the actual water pump out, dude. You kind of want to get these braces out of the way for us to get the fan shroud out. These are gonna be 15mm bolts right here. Pop these suckers out, pop these ones, move it out of the way, pop these clips out, get this plastic piece out of here. Then there's gonna be 3 bolts here. Those are 13mm. And of course, underneath this plastic piece, there are more hidden bolts that you gotta remove. Boom. This bar's out. Then there's a few T30 socket bolts right there. And 2 of the same ones on this side. There's a couple more right here. So get yourself a cute little tool like this. It's a T40. And unscrew that bolt. Boom. Now we have enough room to get the shroud out. This electronic piece right here for the fan itself, right here, there's gonna be a little tab. Push on it and this thing pops right up. Like that. Boom, move that out of the way. So then we gotta remove the fan shroud. The fan shroud literally only has 1 bolt. It is a T30 right on the right side, on the driver's side. There's gonna be a clip right on here. Yep. Clip right in the center, and the same clip on the other side. And this whole thing literally just slides up. So if you don't know yet, these cars don't actually have a radiator coolant drain system. So what you gotta do is just pop off a whole bunch of random hoses. Pop off the hose off the thermostat right there. That top black 90-degree angled hose. We're gonna pop that off and start draining it from that hose just as a start. Because the thermostat literally is right here. Yep, there you go. Start draining all your coolant. It's just a regular old clip. Pull it up, pull the hose off, and start draining. Once majority of the coolant is out, obviously you're not gonna drain all of it with just that one hose. We're gonna just start removing the thermostat itself. We're gonna make some room for the actual water pump. There's a top hose right there with the clamp. Then behind it, you can kind of see, there's a big hose right there, same sort of idea. There's a wire clamp, you pull it up, the hose should just remove fairly easily. And then there's this front hose right here, which you're gonna need a flathead or something to unscrew those clamps, remove them, and the thermostat should, in theory, just pop right off. There you go. Boom. There we go. Beautiful. So as you can see, there are a couple AC lines that are in the way for us to unscrew that clamp on the left, but the one on the right actually has a little bit more room. So what we're gonna do is unscrew that clamp and we should pop it off right off the radiator with the hose. How's it going? There we go. To push the hose from both sides, you kind of need to use 2 tools, 2 flatheads or some sort of tool like that, but that's the easiest way to do it because you can't reach to it from the bottom, so the top is literally your only option. There's also a little screw right there that holds the thermostat to the actual body or the chassis of the frame, and it's easier to remove the screw later after you remove this hose, otherwise everything's just going to be too squishy and bouncy around, so pretty short. Nice. So now the idea is you slide the thermostat forward towards the firewall. This is an electrical thermostat. There is the connector, you can see. It's a basic connector, little clip, pull it up. Boom. Thermi is out. Nothing like the classics anymore, man. All this new tech. Get an F10, they said. As you can see, that is the water pump right there. While we're up here, while the car is not quite exactly jacked up, there's gonna be an E14 bolt right there, and it's much easier to access that bolt from the top. And then right there, on the very bottom, there's 2 more E14s. Remove those and the water pump is literally detached from the actual mounting, and we could pull more hoses out. There's one main big hose from the back. It's gonna be a flathead or a 6mm. There's an electrical connection. Also, of course, this is gonna happen, so just be prepared to get wet.
They could have just put a drain.
So once you get that rear hose off, the one that's more up top is easier if you go through right here. That way, if you come from the back, this entire front subframe is right here. You go through and you're greeted with the water pump itself. If you pull the water pump forward a little bit and up, you are gonna be able to reach the last hose, the side one. And now you gotta find an angle of where you can actually remove the pump itself from this entire cluster, you know? Be real careful with your radiator. You don't want to puncture any holes in it when you're removing this, but just overall, be real careful with everything. All the hoses, if you're not replacing them especially, just be very gentle and very careful. Like that. I mean, at this point, it's literally just backwards. Do exactly what we just did, but everything in reverse. And you should be good to go. Something to note, when you're putting the hoses back on, kind of make sure that they're lubricated a little bit with the coolant that it uses anyway. And those hoses should slip on quite easily. When you're trying to seat the water pump in its seating position, make sure before tightening any of the 3 screws, make sure that they're all seated in their correct position. Once all 3 are seated and you know there's a little bit of slack all over the place, that's when you can start tightening all 3. But do not start tightening them individually, do little increments at a time. Well, after everything's buttoned up nice and tight and you are confident that all your hoses are where they're supposed to be and that nothing's loose and everything's tight to spec, spray down your area with some water and then dry it off with an air hose right after. That way, in case you are leaking, you know 100% where it's coming from. Before we put all the plastics and the shroud back on, we're actually going to be doing the bleeding procedure. This requires a few simple things. You fill up the tank as much as you possibly can until it starts to overflow per se. Then you get inside the car, push the push to start button without holding your brake. Do not hold your brake, we're just turning the vehicle on. Press it on. Make sure your fan settings are at the lowest and make sure your temperature is at its highest. Like that. After this, we hit the gas pedal for about 10 to 12 seconds and we should hear the water pump activate. The water pump is definitely working, you can hear it. It's obviously low on coolant, so it's gonna be sucking it through this entire system. This entire procedure is gonna take about 12 minutes or so. Meanwhile, in that time, you could be topping it off. This extra source of energy is simply there just in case your car doesn't die on itself. The cap doesn't have to be closed nor open. It's up to you, doesn't really matter. The more you keep an eye out on this, the better it is for you. If the engine is cold, like it probably is in your case, because you were doing a water pump, you do not want to fill it up all the way to the top, simply because when the engine is going to get warm, the coolant is going to expand, which means there's going to be more volume. You want to fill it up to the bare minimum. The bottom of this plastic yellow piece, that is the minimum. So you want to fill it up to just that alone. Something to know here, the more coolant you have, clearly the more pressure there is, the more intense your water pump starts to work, and the more intense this nozzle starts to spray. Once the entire burping procedure is done and it's consistently at the minimal level and you don't need to add any more, that's when your vehicle is ready to go back on a drive, dude. Once the fan is on, start up the car. Don't put any other plastics on. I mean, I just recommend doing this. Start her up, make sure the car warms up and is heated properly. Make sure it's not overheating, make sure you have no leaks anywhere. And then at that point, that's when I would put on all the plastics and go for a drive. We have a little bit of smoke because obviously we still have some water. It's not smoke, it's just vapor. A bunch of old residue and water evaporating at this point. As you can see, we're at good operating temperatures. Oil temperatures are staying good. Water temperatures are staying good. I think that's job well done. And on that note, if you're unfamiliar with this channel, well, we're doing a bunch of cool stuff. We have some E39 M5 stuff, some E46 stuff, building an E46 V10 M3, you know what I mean? So if you're into this kind of stuff, make sure to subscribe. Like, dude, I don't know why, but the algorithm chooses things really appropriately and it really helps out. So that's it, dude. That's gonna do it for this one. Peace.